Drummer here, and let's review a book together. Today we're talking about Pokemon Crochet, the official Pokemon Crochet book published by the Pokemon Company. This book is written by Sabrina Summers, and it covers 20 cute crochet patterns that you can make yourself at home. This book is sold on its own, but I've also seen another form of packaging in which it is a kit, and I believe the kit is kind of a smaller version of this book with not as many patterns, and it looks like it has enough supplies in it to make an Eevee. There might be other kits with other Pokemon in them, but that's what I've seen so far at Michael's craft store. Let's take a look at Pokemon Crochet. So this is the official Pokemon Crochet pattern book. It says, bring your favorite Pokemon to life with 20 cute crochet patterns. And it has the official seal of approval as a 100% official licensed Pokemon product. So I saw this at Michael's Crafts and I was pretty interested because it is a smaller book. It has a couple of examples on the back, and I ended up making a Gengar. I made a few changes overall with the pattern, not a whole lot, but a few things. And you can see the difference between their Gengar and how mine turned out. So I changed the pose a little bit. I wanted him to kind of be reaching out a little bit more, and I accidentally made his legs a little bit shorter because I missed some of the rounds. So his legs ended up stubbier, so I gave him more of like an action pose, like he's spreading his legs out real far, instead of the ones where he is more sturdy and standing with his two legs right underneath him and his tail in the back. I also ended up using foam instead of felt for his features here, just because I wanted them to kind of stand out a little bit more, but they are still glued on just as the instructions recommend, and he seems pretty sturdy so far. So it's not perfect, but I am really happy with how it turned out, especially as this is my first amigurumi. This is my first crocheted stuffed creature of any kind, and I'm really happy with it. So in this book, right now I've got tabbed Gengar, and I have tabbed 2 more Pokemon I would like to take a look at and try for myself one day in the future. So when you first open this up, it gives you an overall table of contents, and it starts giving you examples of some of the Pokemon in this book. We get an introduction from the author, and she goes over how the book is structured and goes through difficulty levels as well. So this Gengar that I crocheted is from officially the beginner level here. The next Pokemon I have is officially in the quote-unquote easy level, and the last one I have is in that intermediate level. And I think I just barely have enough skills to do things at the intermediate level, but I have not completed a project at that level. So as with most crochet books, we get a little bit of information about basic tools and materials. One other change is that I did not use fiber fill or soft stuffing from the store. I actually upcycled some pieces of foam similar to the ones I used for his features in his little spikes, so they would be really sturdy, and I cut up an old t-shirt that I wanted to recycle and use that for the main stuffing of his body. So he's pretty sturdy and he's not quite as squishy, and that is also why, especially when my tension wasn't the best while holding the yarn, you do get some spots in the back where you can see a bit of that green foam peeking through. But give him a little massage and, you know, you don't see it as much after that. So these tools and materials are very basic. You can get them at thrift stores, you can get them at any basic craft store. And it also goes into some basic techniques. The main technique you need for all of these patterns is the magic ring, and this is a pretty good explanation, and the diagrams are a pretty good example of how to do the magic ring. What I ended up doing is I looked up different techniques on how to do the magic ring on YouTube, and mostly I looked at short videos or photo series showing people doing it, because it's one of those techniques that can be difficult, much like foundation chains, and starting the second part of your foundation chain can be really difficult for some people. Turning your rows and doing that properly can be difficult for some people, and magic rings can be difficult. So that's something you might need a little extra help on. So these are, again, some of the basic stitch guides. You really don't need that many stitches. Actually, let me take a look. Yeah, I pretty much know all of the stitches that are in here already, and I'm by no means an expert at crochet. So this is the pattern that I followed for Gengar. A couple of things that I really liked are how they give you these sort of color swatches so you can match your own yarn. I did end up going and getting the Circulo Duno yarn for this project. It ended up taking just over one of these. So this is the second one, and I used very little of it. It's 186 yards, so I would say maybe I used just under 200 yards when doing this, and I ended up using a size 3.5 millimeter hook. So this yarn is a DK, it is a 3-weight. For the actual pattern itself, it recommends a 2.5 millimeter hook, and it also recommends a 90 grams of purple yarn, and they specify a type of yarn there. So I made my hook a little bit bigger, and I think this yarn is also maybe a tiny bit bigger than the yarn they recommend, just so I could manipulate the stitches as easy as possible. One thing I really like about this is they have the graph paper templates for any of the felt pieces, or in my case foam pieces, to cut out for their faces. I went more freehand with mine, which is why his is not quite so exact, but if you would prefer to be more fastidious, you can get yourself a piece of graph paper and count out how many squares each item is and use that as a template to cut out your own felt. So this is the second page for Gengar. Again, they do a really great job of showing the examples of all of the pieces. That was definitely the hardest part, was keeping track of all of the small pieces and making sure that you have made enough of them. Those back spikes took quite a while, but I am really glad with how they came out. It is such a big characteristic of Gengar that I wanted to make sure I got all of them. So let's take a look at two other Pokemon I would be interested in crocheting in the future. So one would be Psyduck. This is the next level of difficulty. So this is going from beginner to easy. A couple things I really like about this Psyduck pattern is this kind of peanut shape they have for the body, and the fact that he's clutching his head in his classic, migraine pose when he's doing a psychic attack. So overall, it doesn't have as many pieces necessarily, but it does have quite a bit more shaping. For example, getting his bill to look like that, and even the little shaping for his little pieces of hair can be a little bit more difficult. But I think that would be really cute, especially if you have a Misty costume for Halloween. The intermediate pattern I would love to try is Bulbasaur. Bulbasaur has always been one of my favorite Pokemon. I have always been partial to grass and water-based Pokemon, and this again has that nice graph paper template, especially since this guy has so many different parts in felt to cut out. I think I would use felt rather than foam for all of his pieces, since they do have to lay more on all of the curvature, but I think it would be so awesome to actually crochet his little, bulb that he has on the back, and to practice using all of these different techniques to bring Bulbasaur to life. A few other cool Pokemon they have a lot of Eevee evolutions, including Flareon with some lovely fuzzy fur type yarn for tail and hair and that collar that Flareon has. Another one that I think would be really cool is Dragonite. So this was always a really neat Pokemon from the first few generations. It was always a very impressive dragon style Pokemon. So I could see this being made really large if you wanted it to. And of course, another really cute one we have Pikachu and we have Pichu. So you could have loads of them, you could have both of them, you could make them magnetic and stick them together. There's just so many possibilities. So here's my results. I managed to crochet a Gengar. Gengar is one of my favorite Pokemon. I always love Psychic and Ghost Pokemon, and I ended up sizing him up a little bit from the original pattern, but I just love how he turned out. He's so cute and squishable, and it was a challenge, but I think I did a pretty good job considering this is the first time I have ever made anything like this. I definitely think I will take on the next project I have marked in this book and probably continue experimenting with different hooks and different yarn sizes. It's really easy to size up when it comes to crochet. You can take a look at the recommended yarn weight for any hook size, make sure they match. You can also crochet a quick swatch, so just do a couple of rounds or a couple of rows and see how it looks. But one thing I will say for this particular book, I mentioned already the magic ring, how that can be a difficult method for some, but something else is just really getting into details. The book is laid out very simply. It has very simply designed directions, but there are some things that are easy to miss. So for example, my guy has really tiny legs, and that's because I missed one area where it had the directions for multiple rounds all on the same line, and that was something that only appeared for the arms and for the legs, and also for like a little bit of the middle part of the body, but none of the other parts had the directions written that way. So that threw me off, and I managed to correct myself on the arms, but he ended up with little, stumpy legs. Another great thing about crochet is that you can always go back and fix things. If I wanted to take off the little legs and add some more rows on there so they're longer, I certainly could, but I really just wanted to get him finished up so I can enjoy having him here for the Halloween season, because I'm gonna be making videos about that pretty soon. So let me know, what Pokemon would you like to crochet? Do you want a starter set, your very own Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur? Because you can have that in here. Would you want to take features from different Pokemon and mix them together so you have your own creepy crochet hybrids? Or would you just want to crochet them all and slap little Ditto faces on them so you have an army of Dittos of every Pokemon in the book? So many possibilities. But I'll see you in another video. Bye.